Imagine the most advanced robot you can picture walking into your kitchen. When it needs to pound something, does its hand turn into a hammer? When it needs to cut, does it become a scalpel? When it needs to heat your food, does it shoot microwaves out of its fingers? Or does it simply walk over to your microwave, realize it has never seen that model before, connect to the internet, read the manual, figure it out, and keep going? That is one of the clearest ways to understand what is changing with artificial intelligence agents right now, and why this shift matters more than most people realize. Most people still think of artificial intelligence as something you talk to. You ask a question, it gives you an answer, maybe you ask a follow-up, and then you decide what happens next. An agent changes that model because now you're not just talking to a tool. You are delegating work to a system that can go do the work on your behalf. An agent can take a goal, make a plan, use tools, adjust based on what it finds, and keep moving without you hand-holding every step. It can search for information, open files, use software, call tools, and sometimes spin off additional agents to help with parts of the job. So this is no longer just asking artificial intelligence a question and getting an answer back. It is much closer to giving artificial intelligence a job and letting it go do the job. That is a much bigger shift than faster chat, because once agents enter the picture, output starts getting produced in a completely different way. One system can break the work into pieces, assign those pieces, coordinate the results, and bring back something that looks finished. A research brief, a project plan, a recommendation, a first draft of a workflow, or a package of decisions that used to require time, coordination, and labor. That part is exciting, and it is real. But here's the part I think people are still underestimating. When output gets dramatically cheaper, the hard part does not disappear. It becomes easier to see, because the hard part was never production alone. It was thinking. From the infrastructure side, NVIDIA's chief executive made a version of this point that I think is incredibly useful. He was talking about the difference between training a model and actually using it to solve problems. Training is like reading at massive scale. The system absorbs patterns, examples, language, and structure. Using the model is different. That is where it has to work through a problem, decide what matters, weigh trade-offs, choose a path, and produce something that works in this situation with these constraints. That turns out to be the expensive part. The industry assumed the hard part would mostly be training, and that once the model existed, using it would become the cheap and easy side. But the people building the infrastructure are telling you the opposite. The reasoning side, the planning side, the part that looks most like thinking, is where the cost and complexity are showing up. And that is not just a chip story, it is a work story, because the same pattern is now showing up across knowledge work. The production side of work is getting cheaper fast, absorbing information, summarizing it, drafting documents, organizing material, building first passes, and creating something polished enough to move around the organization is getting easier to generate. The thinking side of work is different. Deciding what matters, spotting weak assumptions, reasoning through trade-offs, knowing what fits this context, knowing what is safe to act on, and being willing to put your name on the outcome. That part is not getting cheap. If anything, it is becoming more valuable. Agents make that even more obvious because they can produce work quicker and with less friction than most organizations are prepared for. So the question is no longer just whether artificial intelligence can help you produce something. The real question is who is actually thinking through whether it is right. That is the bottleneck. If one agent can gather research, another can draft a summary, another can build the deck, Another can generate the recommendation, and all of it lands on your desk looking clean and confident. What exactly are you verifying? Are you checking the facts, the assumptions, and the logic? Are you checking whether the recommendation makes sense in your company, with your constraints, your stakeholders, your risks, and your timing? Are you checking whether the system optimized for what actually matters, or simply for what was easiest to produce? Polished output is not the same thing as sound judgment, and when agents make polished output abundant, that gap starts to matter a lot more. The people who do best in the next phase are not going to be the people who simply know how to get artificial intelligence to produce more. A lot of people will be able to do that. The people who stand out are going to be the ones who can look at an agent's output and tell you what to trust, what to question, what is missing, and where the real risk lives. And if you are building or deploying these systems, the important questions are not just whether the agent can do the work. The important questions are what it is allowed to access, what it is allowed to change, what requires sign-off, what has to be traceable, where human review happens, and who owns the outcome when the system is wrong. That's where the real operating model gets built. Because once agents can do more work on their own, the human role does not disappear. It shifts upward, away from raw production, and toward judgment, verification, prioritization, and accountability. So this week, look at your own work and separate it into two piles. One pile is production, drafting, summarizing, formatting, organizing, assembling, and creating first-pass output. The other pile is thinking, reasoning, deciding, verifying, weighing trade-offs, and owning the result. Then ask yourself two questions. Which parts of the production pile could an agent probably do already at 80% of your quality? And which parts of the thinking pile would you still refuse to trust it with on its own? That gap is where the value is moving. And if you can already see it, you are early. If an artificial intelligence agent handled part of your job tomorrow, what would you still refuse to trust it with on its own, and why?